Hi Freelancer, welcome to today's episode of the Freelance Blueprint. I'm your host Lizzie, a freelance UX designer and digital nomad. Today we're joined by Kyle. He started his freelance career as a web developer and now helps web designers and developers kickstart their freelance career, and he does so through his community, Freelance Fan. He also launched his own SaaS project, Client Manager, and is a host of the Freelancer podcast. In this episode, we're talking about how he transitioned from a full-time position into freelancing, the extra hours he put in at the beginning of his career, and the free time he now gets to enjoy thanks to all his hard work in the past. Let's find out more about how he got started. Hi Kyle, thanks for joining today.
Elisabeth, thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Where are you calling from?
South Africa. It's a small town, or it's a country, but I stay in a small town called Knysna. There's about 80,000 people here. So it's a really small place, beautiful place, like on the ocean, on the coast. So yeah, that's where I am. That's where I'm calling from. And how about you?
Nice. I'm in Japan at the moment. I'm in Kyoto.
Oh, there we go. And how are you finding it there?
I love it. It's a bit weird because it's Asia. And for me, Asia is always chaotic. A lot of traffic, a lot of people. But here, even if you go to a big city like Kyoto, it's quiet. So it's a bit of adjustment, but it's nice. I like it a lot.
And do you have like those nice trees, in Japan or where you are now? Like, does it look like as beautiful as what like the stock photography shows?
It does. I highly recommend to go. And I'm here for the cherry blossoms, so you can slowly see some of them coming. And it's just this nice feeling of spring. And yeah, it's very beautiful.
Very nice, yeah.
Cool. So if I didn't know anything about you, but I would meet your wife, how would she describe you to me?
Wow, I've never been asked that question. That's a great question to start off. Wow, she would say a couple of things. She would say good things, like that we've been married like 9 years. That I'm a best friend and I'm a good father, I guess, to our baby. She's 7 months now, and I enjoy my work. I work hard. I also work smart, and I think that'll be a start. From that side.
Nice. Sounds very nice. Also, you have your own freelance business. You run a community. You have your own podcast. You have a SaaS project. You're a dad. So also congratulations on the 100K downloads on the podcast. You also have a newsletter, so there's a lot of things that I want to ask you about. But let's start with where you started, which was web design and development, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell the listeners a little bit about how you started?
I actually started as a marketing manager. So I was at a company. The problem was I wasn't earning enough. So I had to earn like a side income because my wife, she's a foreigner. She came down and stayed with me, of course. We were struggling like each month, and it's like, man, I could work harder and, get a maybe 10 or 20% salary increase, but it still won't fix, the issues, let's say. I had the marketing knowledge, and then it was like, she actually recommended, why don't you study web development? And I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. And eventually I did it, and I sort of combined the marketing and the web design services, which is actually a really nice combo because now we're offering once-off services like web design, and then now it's like, okay, great, you've got a good website, how are you going to actually get results to it? And then it's like, offering the marketing services. So I started on Fiverr. For those who don't know, that's like a freelance platform like Upwork, and within a year, I managed to earn more than my full-time income on the side. And then I left about 6 months after that, my job. And I've been full-time since 2017. And that led to various different types of businesses, even e-commerce and, different stuff. And it's really been a good journey. Obviously, I'm going past like very fast, like all the difficulties and the challenges because I almost wanted to give up. But I'm so glad that I didn't. And that leads us to today, where you just mentioned like a lot of the stuff that, that I'm busy with.
Okay, so several things that I want to ask you about. One is what you think of platforms like Fiverr and Upwork, and also about the challenges and moments where you wanted to give up but didn't give up. So let's start with platforms like Fiverr, Upwork, because personally, I think it's good that those platforms are out there. It's good that there is a first step. But at the same time, I think it's very discouraging for freelancers when you see how many other freelancers are out there, how many people are pitching for the same project, also how low some of the rates are. Do you have any tips or encouragement for people who are working or trying to get clients through Upwork and Fiverr and platforms like that?
It can be a big topic to discuss, but I'm going to try and distill quite a few different thoughts. So the first one is I don't really agree with the myth of freelance platforms being bad for freelancers. I think it's actually a good place to start. And if we look at the statistics, most people actually start out on freelance platforms. And I think what's nice about it is you get experience, and not only the experience, but you get more confidence, right? But in saying that, there are negatives. You know, you get people who are still on there a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, a race to the bottom, who, you know, someone charges $10, I'll charge $7, or someone charges $1,000, I'll charge $200. And it really is a race to the bottom. So like everything, pros and cons, right? But I think that it's a good place to start to get your foot in the door. So how I would stand out, and this is what I did, you know, because I noticed this like when I started in 2015. And I was like, man, how do I compete with all of these guys, like thousands of people, you know, offering the same types of service than me? So I sort of flipped it around and I offered a website conversion report. So it'll be like for $5, where it would be like a PDF of my suggestions, 3 or 4 pages, on how you can improve your website. And I really tried to over deliver. I mean, it's $5. My cut was $4, you know, which is hardly anything. Really tried to over deliver. And then from there, I would upsell them to $100 wireframe of like, and when I say wireframe, I'm not talking Figma. I had no idea about Figma. I just used PowerPoint and like a rough sort of sketch, right, back then, of the website of my suggestions. And then I would upsell them to code the website, which all I knew at the time was like Bootstrap and the basics, and I would code it. And then I would upsell them to $1,000 monthly marketing retainer. So that was my strategy. And it actually worked pretty well, you know, to get clients and upsell and all of that type of thing. That's what I would recommend, but I know it is a bit more nuanced depending on the service that you're offering and all of that. I think either way, just to wrap up on this point, my perspective would be you get listed on a few. List your services on 2 or 3 or 4. Be proactive in reaching out. You know, it's all about the reviews, the testimonials and everything. And then either way, build your personal brand. You know, reach out to clients off the platform. You know, it might be a good place to start to get your first few $100 a month or first $1,000 or $2,000 a month to get started, right? Get experience, get confidence, get results. And then, you know, on the side, be building your brand and everything. So I think it does still work for a lot of people if you are strategic about it and you communicate very well and you really try and over deliver. But just like everything, it can have its negatives, and you have to definitely avoid the race to the bottom the longer you're there. So yeah, a lot one can go into, but that's my initial thoughts on freelance platforms.
I think it's also really depending on the platform itself, because there are some where they have some sort of hiring process that you have to go through. So it's kind of also their selling point to the recruiters or people who are hiring for people, that it's like, oh, the people we have are actually high quality people. Not everyone can sign up. So there are also these kind of platforms. So I agree. I also have several profiles on different platforms, and some I didn't get a single gig through and some I got several gigs through. And like you said, it's just put yourself out there. It's a start, and it's easy to set up a profile somewhere and continue from there than just sit at home. It's like, where do I find someone who could use those services? The other question I had was, so you basically gave a summary of your Fiverr journey, and the strategy is really good, the whole upselling thing. And everyone also talks about how Apple doesn't just sell you the phone, but the iPods and this and all these, like the cloud, all this kind of stuff. And it's kind of the same strategy. When it comes to the struggles and challenges, what was like the hardest moment for you where you almost gave up? And what was it that made you continue?
I think it was, it took a while to get results. And it was tough because I would work like, or I would leave for work at like just after 7 o'clock in the morning. I would come back like at about 6 p.m. And then I would have to try and work on my business, also try and not neglect my wife, you know, and, you know, she would want to talk and stuff. And I'll be like, I just need to work on this thing. And I'll be like, late nights, early mornings, even in my lunch break on weekends, and you're putting in all of this effort, and things are getting hectic, like you can't spend as much time, together and everything. So it was very challenging. It was not easy at all. It was very frustrating, and I was also frustrated. It was like, why are things moving so slow? And you're doing all of this work for such little amounts, eventually, to get some traction and everything. And I think also that imposter syndrome, like, I can't do this, So I lacked a lot of confidence back then, and I couldn't do cold calls. I would try and cold call people, and I would freeze, and I would start shaking, and then I'll just literally put down the call because I was so nervous. I think it was that fear of unknown, and it was a challenge. I really had like a lot of confidence issues, like and belief that it could be done. But I think what was counting in my favor was I didn't have a choice. I literally had to make it work. So even if I was feeling this way, which I was, and it was difficult, I had to push through because there was literally almost no other alternative. We don't have people to rely on or family members or whatever. We have to make this work, So I just sort of pushed through the emotions and the struggles, and it's like, we have to do it. So I'm glad I did. And I always encourage freelancers for the same thing, Put yourself in a position now, put in the hard work, put in the effort now, and in a year from now, your future self will thank you. And it sounds a bit cliche and cheesy and whatever, but it really is that way. You have to really push through the hard times to really get some good results. Because if you think about it, just objectively, anything new, anything worth achieving, it's not going to be easy, or it shouldn't be easy. It's going to be new, it's going to be challenging, but it's how one deals with those obstacles and challenges and pushes through. So anyway, that's my speech.
No, I completely agree with that. Especially, I recently read a quote which was something along the lines of anything worth achieving is on the other side of fear. And it's like that. It's if everything was easy, all of us would be successful. Every one of us would have this villa in this amazing beach place or whatever, if it was that easy. And you kind of have to give up something to gain something else. So in your case, you gave up your time, you gave up some time with your partner, so that now you can make more money with your freelance career than you did in your permanent job, and you probably buy yourself a lot of time back through that, and you can probably spend more time with your wife and with your family, which is something that looks so far away and crazy when you just start and you're in this, oh my God, how am I going to make this work mode? But if you just stick through it, then and it's also one thing I would be interested to know is when you went from still working full time in a permanent job to fully transitioning freelancing, because you said you'd have your job, you'd come home, you'd do these things in your lunch break, etc. When was the point where you said, okay, I'm going to give this 100% and I'm going to quit my job? Or did you have a slow transition?
It was actually a pretty slow transition because I actually enjoyed my job. The only issue was I just wasn't earning enough. So that was the main issue. And also obviously the flexibility and freedom aspect, which was enticing, because back then I would be working on like some ad campaigns and stuff, listening in my earpods like the 4-hour work week. And I'm like, what? Do people actually live like this? Yeah, I mean like a little cubicle sort of office thing. And I'm thinking, wow, okay. But it was a pretty slow process because what I needed to do was first get out of debt, and we had a lot of debt just by not excessive living. We lived in a small room. We didn't even have cheese. Cheese was a luxury when we bought food. Like we were struggling. But we just got deep in debt and whatever. So that was the first thing: pay off the debt, and then trying to find a balance between trying to reinvest in the business to get more. Hey, I'm going to test $50 on some ads or something, to get some client maybe or something. And you try all of these things and you lose some money there and it's frustrating and whatever. But for me, it was, I needed 3 months worth of savings and I saved that. And I also had to make sure I was earning, the same as my full-time income on the side. And I know it doesn't always work out that way. People can do it differently. They've got different thresholds of risk and different, fallbacks and everything like that. But for me, I needed that security of like, okay, now is the time. And then when I felt it was the time, then I, let my bosses know, and then there was like 3-month transition because I didn't want to just drop them. I wanted to also help out, and so for me it was a slow one.
Also, the thing that I found interesting was when you mentioned cold calls and you said you actually hung up the phone, because for me, cold calls I already associate with emails, and I know it's when you actually hopped on a call with someone, but at the same time it's like cold outreach, sending someone an email and most likely going to get ghosted. One of my freelance friends, and we kind of connected on Instagram, and are in a similar stage of our career and are trying to build like an online brand, these kind of things. And he told me about his strategy to go out there, and he just went through all the restaurants and anything he could find on Google Maps and would either call people or go there to help them with marketing or build a website, things like that. And I find this so brave, and in a way it's really good because you're actually in front of the person, but I would be so scared to call them. It's like, I want to sell you something. Even my coach told me to do this through DMs. And it's just so, even on DMs, I don't want to reach out to people with the purpose of selling to them. It just feels wrong to me. How did you, did this work for you?
Yeah, so, I mean, as you're speaking, I'm like, I can resonate so much with that. But for me, it was like severe anxiety. Like it was terrible. If I had to record those phone calls, wow. But I think what helped me is eventually I just sort of didn't care. I just said, listen, if I have to call 100 people, email 100 people, I don't care. And the worst they can say is no, and hopefully I'll get better at it. Also had like a mind shift change from the perspective of cold outreach, because my perspective was, yes, there's a sleazy way of doing cold outreach, and with a lot of AI bots and like lying and stuff, and that's not my style. So my perspective was, if I can help this business and I can see I can help this business, maybe their website sucks or maybe they don't have a website, I viewed it from the perspective of I have to reach out to them because I want to help them, and their business could be better for themselves or for their staff, and it's almost like I'm doing a disservice by not reaching out. So that mind shift change helped me to be like, yes, I can help them, So I'm going to reach out, and the worst they can say is no. And look, to get to that point, it took a lot of time, and it wasn't like an overnight thing. But I would say that helped me.
It also helped me a lot. One of my friends, he was on the first podcast season, and we were talking about sales, and he also said the thing that helped him, and after he told me, helped me a lot as well. If you don't think of selling something to them, but if you think of, can this product help them? It just makes it so much easier, because you're genuinely trying to help. You genuinely offer them something that they actually want or need. And I used to be in marketing before. I used to do copywriting for advertising. And I also felt like you're selling stuff to people. And that's when Instagram, Facebook, all these like advertising, online marketing ads started. And one of my friends said, I find them so annoying. Like, I just want to see the posts of my friends. I don't want to see those adverts. And for me, it was the opposite, because the algorithm was so tailored to me that it said things like, oh, we have this UX event in Vienna happening. Do you want to join? It's like, of course I want to go. Like, and I got good connections out of it. So I saw the ups from it, that like all the positives, that I did have marketing tailored to me, but at the same time, I'm spending too much money on this concert, I'm spending too much money on this. But also it helped me. I got good connections out of it. And it also probably depends not just if you go in with the approach to sell or to help, but also with the approach of the other person. If they're already like, oh, another advert, that's not like automatically being an advert, I'm not gonna look into it, or being someone who is open to this kind of messaging. But going back to freelancing, so you said that your first clients you got through Fiverr, and basically pitching them for like a small product and then upselling them. Who are your clients now, and how do they find you?
Interesting fun fact. So the very first client that I got on Fiverr, he was still with me up until last year. He eventually sold his business and everything. So I know it's a rare example, but just circling back. So what helped back then was he gave a lot of referral clients as well. So once you get that snowball effect, I think it gets much easier. So who are my clients today? So I've got essentially 3 agencies, where I would have I've got one in the medical niche, one in the therapy niche, and then one sort of general business. The one I share publicly, it's Startup Starship, and that's sort of like the general one. And that deals with like different types of businesses. There's in crypto, in e-commerce, in content creation, SaaS, those types of businesses. How did they find me? So nowadays I don't do much outreach for clients, and quite frankly, this year I've not proactively gone seeking for clients because I've been too preoccupied on a few other businesses, and I'm pretty happy with where the current business is. So I'm just focusing on keeping our current clients happy and upselling them where needed and everything. But how I got them, so it's a bit of a few things. So SEO has been really good to get my niched clients, and then just referrals works really well. So I'm trying to also think of like if I was a listener or something, what I could do. And I think it's one of those things where it's like it's different at different stages of your business. I think I always say that like the first year or two, you're sort of figuring things out, and it's quite a grind, getting clients, upselling them, keeping them, retaining them, trying to over deliver all of those things, and you're figuring out which marketing channels work. But then from year 3, then your SEO and your referrals start kicking in very nicely, and then from there you don't have to be as proactive in outreach. That's what I've seen, at least. I don't know what has worked for you, or any insights from you.
It was the exact same for me. So the first year I just applied to any freelance gig I found. I couldn't do cold outreach because it's just, I don't want to, like, still I feel weird, like, oh, I have something that you might like, So I applied to job adverts. So it's, I kind of compare it to when you have a shop. So if I were a shop owner, let's say that's my freelance business, and cold outreach is like going outside and handing out flyers to people, and it's just icky to me. Whereas when you go on LinkedIn, you're basically knocking on people's doors that have a sign who are saying like looking for staff or something along those lines. So that there's a demand. Maybe you're not the right fit, but at least that there's a chance, like the chance increases that they might hire you. And then it was around the 3rd year where my SEO kicked in. I've had my website running for a while, and I need to double check if it's still the case. But if you type in freelance UX designer London, I'm on page 1 on Google. So for whatever reason, people come to me through that, and I get inbound leads for that. I get inbound leads through referrals, like what you mentioned. And that's like when you have a shop front where people see what you offer and they come in. You don't have to do much of advertising. You don't have to go knocking on doors or hand out flyers. You are just in your shop and someone is already interested. Otherwise, you wouldn't look inside. And that's when it becomes much, much easier. And I find one way to help that shop front become more attractive is telling people what you offer, good marketing, good branding, and word of mouth. So it's like with any real shop, but it's digital if you're offering online services. So for me, it was exactly the same thing. What do you think has changed for you since you started freelancing compared to when you were in a full-time job?
Yeah, I think it's actually quite funny. So my wife and I, we went for a nice evening sunset walk, and on our way back home, we were actually talking about like this topic, how things have changed a lot in our lives and everything, and one of the things that we discussed was how I have changed in the business side, and I think there's a major difference in terms of how when I was an employee versus being an employer now, actually hiring people, working with people, and all of those things. I'm much happier. I'm a lot more content. I'm a lot more focused in how I start projects. I'm more confident. also in a way humble in the sense that I know that running a business, anything could fail, and we were chatting about it. Like, you had this webinar chat in the community about finances and stuff, and it was exceptional, talking about the practicality of it and everything. I think it's important to manage finances and not let finances manage you and stuff. So I sort of plan a lot of different things, and I take risks on a lot of different things and whatever. But sort of, I would say, frugal in a lot of different expenses, because I know that if you don't manage it well, you can get in a lot of trouble. And even though I've been doing this for 7 years full time, I still have the mindset of it could very well fail. And I was telling my wife, I was like, even if, and I do make jokes at it, but it could be a reality. Even if I have to get a full-time job, even if I'm really not unemployable as what I think I am, I would still be grateful for these memories that we had, the freedom, the flexibility, the memories, the vacations, the time. I mean, even now after this call, let's say it's almost 10 a.m. I'm going to go there and just sit with my wife and play with my kid for a bit, and then, go to a coffee shop after this and go work and do some other things, So it's like, how can I do that at like a full-time job, So even if I have to do that, I've experienced 7 years of a true joy, and these memories will stick with us for a lifetime. So yeah, I would say that it's a very long answer, but that has been my perspective, and that has been my growth and reflection on, the differences. Yeah. And how about you? I'm curious about you.
I don't think I could ever go back to a permanent job. Like, once you've had this freedom, once you've experienced that you can just have a 2-hour lunch break or read a book or do whatever you want. You don't have to start at 9 o'clock. You can start at 11 p.m. if you want to. Whatever you want to do, you can. And I've had this discussion with other podcast guests, and one of them was saying the madness he found in permanent jobs was that even if you're done with your work, you still have to sit on your laptop until 6 p.m. because if you would get up earlier, it would be frowned upon. There would be some discussion. So even if you completed everything, you still have to sit there, and it's a waste of your time. The company doesn't really get anything out of it anyway, and it's this unspoken etiquette. Whereas when you freelance, if you delivered your work faster, great for you, great for the client, both of you move on. There's no discussion of, oh, but I charge you per hour, or I've experienced that even if you deliver things faster, clients are happier. And I also had clients that said, oh, actually, we booked you for 10 days for this, but you've done it in 5. I'm just not going to tell the finance team that you've done it in 5, but good job, enjoy the rest of the day. So those things, I mean, they do happen sometimes with permanent jobs, but not that often. One thing that I personally love about freelancing, and it's not really a slogan, but I think I like to say, is that I use freelancing to make my work life work for me. So, for example, I try to reduce the amount of calls I have, so that I can work from coffee shops instead of having to be in a call booth the whole day. What are the things that you do to make your work life work for you?
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you said that. About I think that's the beauty of like freelancing. And at the heart of it, we're running a business, right? Freelancing is a business. It's not a hobby, And what's nice about it is we can create the business around our desired lifestyle, And when we work, not always, but most of the time, when you work for an employer, it's a compromised lifestyle around your work. You live for the weekends, and you just highlighted a lot of the problems. So it's not bashing, full-time work. It's just a reality, of the differences. How do I make it work for me? I think I do something sort of similar. But I set boundaries. So Mondays and Fridays, I don't have any meetings, unless it's like an extreme exception, like that really can't be done. But generally, like 90% of the time, it's very open. And then I group tasks, like my software stuff, I would group it on like Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. Fridays, I would finish off a bit earlier. I don't touch my laptop from like Saturday afternoon to Sunday evening. I plan for 30 minutes on a Sunday, like what I sort of roughly want to do in the week, So I've just gotten better, I would say, at it. And I think what has helped me, because I've experienced truly, like for months, 2 hours a day of work, like max. But this was way back, like in 2017, when I was really wanting to enjoy, like, wow, now I was working 9-hour days, now I'm working 2-hour days, and I'm earning even more, and it's like crazy. So that was nice. But eventually I actually got a bit bored, and I felt that, I wanted to do something a bit more meaningful. And now I tend to work between 4 to 8 hours a day, depending on the campaigns and what's happening. I just want more flexibility. So if that means it's nice weather, I want to go play some tennis. Like this week is a bit tricky because we're planning to move. So there's a lot of like my free time is gone. But generally speaking, I try and think like, how can I focus on the work that really matters, the stuff that really moves the needle, and then other stuff I want to see if I can outsource, delegate, automate, whatever. And that perspective has also helped me to realize that I don't have to be the one doing the work, or at least all the work, at least. And I think the outsourcing stuff has saved up a lot of my time. And so with that free time, that's where I sort of enjoy extra time with my family, or go play some golf or tennis or whatever, and go for some walks, read, chill. And I think that's the beauty of, and I'm still trying to figure it out, but that's sort of how I've made it work for me.
Nice. It sounds like a very, very nice transition going from 9-hour days to 2-hour days. So can you tell the listeners a little bit of how you made that transition? I guess at the beginning you do a lot of projects, and I've had that in my case where one week I had 7 clients, and then client A asks something, you work on it, client B messages in the meantime, which is urgent. So you stop client A work, and then some client C, like all these kind of things, so overwhelming. And the context switching was so exhausting. And eventually I found a system that works for myself, also a system how I work with clients to not, like what you mentioned before, setting boundaries, and also setting boundaries with myself to not take on more than X amount of clients. Like last year, I got my first 6-figure year. I got my first 20K month. I would not do this again the way I did it, but it was very nice to achieve it. But I also learned that this is not how I want to do it again. And it was through outsourcing, but it was also through overworking, because I just traded a lot of my time for that money. Having 2-hour days is incredibly valuable, because most people they don't even get 2 hours to themselves. If you have a full-time job, if you include the commute, if you then include other household chores and all the other stuff that you need to do, most people don't even get those 2 hours to themselves if you deduct sleep. So how do you manage to only work 2 hours a day with still making more income than you did as a full-time employee?
So just for some transparency, this was only like 2017 side, and it was only for a couple of months. I'd probably say about 3 or 4 months. How I made it work back then was, so first of all, I wasn't earning like 10K a month. I think I was earning like between 5 to 7K a month back then. So it was, I think it'll be more challenging if you're earning like 20, 30, 40 a month to only work 2. I don't know. I'm a bit skeptical of people who do that. But for that amount, what worked for me was I would focus a lot on the marketing services. So I wouldn't really focus on the website stuff. If I did, I would outsource it. I would find some people on Fiverr or Upwork to create like a little website for them, and then my main service was offering SEO, and the SEO side I just outsourced, content writing. Back then it was like SEO was so much easier, to rank. All you had to do was put some blog articles and stuff, and it was easy. And then Google Ads, and Google Ads I was quite heavily in back then. And what was nice about it was you would essentially set it up once, and you can set up an account like properly in like under 2 hours if you got like some experience to it. Back then it was also much easier. And then you would sort of like check it every 2 weeks, like half an hour, Back then it was like I was dealing with 4 or 5 clients. So they weren't paying a lot. It was like maybe 1,000, 1,500 a month on average. And that also allowed me to spend more time, because if they were spending 5,000 a month, the expectations would be extremely high, right? Or 10,000 a month, it would be extremely high. So that sort of helped me. I think that principle still applies today. So I'm big on offering monthly retainers, monthly services. So let's say from 2,000 or 5,000 or 10,000, you would come up with a package and offer that you can sell to a client. What's nice is you can also decide how much work you're going to be doing from that allocation and then outsource the rest, But it's so important to handle expectations, because if you're the one dealing with a client, and I learned this the hard way, the client would always message me on WhatsApp at 8 o'clock at night or on Saturdays or stuff, and I had to set boundaries. No. This is not how it works, And you learn through that, You just get better at it. So yeah, another long answer, but that's sort of what worked for me. But I'm curious now. I'm going to flip it back to you. So what did you learn on your high-figure year? What would you do differently, and how would you sort of earn a good income but also work less?
I think I would probably outsource more. So at the moment I have one subcontractor, but they're working with the client directly. So I'm very transparent. I don't want to pretend that it's me doing something when it's actually someone else. Also, I wouldn't feel confident with that because I want to be able to answer every single question they have. And if it's then a design someone else worked on with certain design decisions, and I don't really know why they did it the way they did, and I just hand it over, I would not feel comfortable with that. So to make that amount of money again, I would probably find more clients where I outsource. And basically with that subcontractor, we connected with some UX Slack channel, and I talked about freelancing, and she just transitioned to UX and asked if she has any tips to find their first gig. And one of my previous clients approached me to ask if I'm available, and they just had a UI project. They wanted consistency. And I thought maybe I just put both of them together, but I'm not sure if she would be comfortable without guidance because it's her first job. And also I knew that the client wanted to work with me specifically. So I asked, what if we work like this? I overlook her work. You still pay me. If there's something wrong, it's still my risk. And I make sure that the work is delivered. And it was a win-win-win because the client gets the project done. My subcontractor gets experience. I also mentor her through things, and I get the additional income. So I get commission, basically, because I charge her a different rate than the client charges me. But also she knows what I charge the client because I told her it's just a question of time when they will hire you directly. And there's enough space for all of us. And I was lucky that I had someone guide me through my journey when I started freelancing. And I also want to give that back. And I think it would be great to have more of those kind of projects, because on that project, I'm not heavily involved time-wise. And over time, the more she learns, the more she gets to understand the project and the client, it's also, I can give her more things to do. And what I learned is to set more boundaries and not to sell anything for money. Like, time is so much more valuable for money. And I had 2 part-time freelance gigs at the time, and I said yes to a project which was full-time, and I knew it was just for this 1 month, but it was for an agency. So I thought, it would be great to get more projects like this. It's more interesting projects. So I worked my 60, 70 hour week, and I said no to hanging out with my friends. I did barely watch any sunsets, or I had no break. And at the same time, I didn't tell my clients that I have this other gig because I thought, I'm just fast. I know I can work fast, so I'll do it. And towards the end, I was burnt out. I wasn't happy with what I delivered. I wasn't proud of the work. I don't feel like the clients got what they deserved. They should have gotten my full attention. And it was just a month, but I don't want to do this again.
It's actually good that these things happen, because I think when you experience the freedom and you experience burnout, you have that experience to fall back on, be like, man, like I really don't want to experience that again. And then that allows you to be stricter in setting those boundaries and saying no to certain things and having better systems and being more disciplined in certain things and knowing what are red flags and what are good clients and all of those types of things. So, and also maybe it's also pricing. And then I think you also explained it well about the timing side. You realize time is the asset, and it's like how we value that time, but it's good to experience it. And look, the reality is as freelancers, there will be seasons for, maybe a month where we really grind a bit harder than other months and stuff, because maybe we want to earn an extra 2 or 3 grand or 5 grand or whatever to go on a vacation for the year or something, and that's fine. But yeah, I think it's important to be aware of that and be like, look, this is not sustainable. This is an exception to the norm. Let me stick it out, but let me also try and plan around it. Maybe I'm going to eat out every single night for the next month, get food delivery to allow for the time things, and you try and make some certain compromises around it. But yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that, and no doubt this year is going to be better because of that.
Yes, absolutely. And it's also what you said with, it's good that those things happen because those are the things that you learn from. And I also feel like those are the things where you start reflecting on what works and what doesn't. And after this one 20K month, it's like, oh my God, amazing. But at the same time, it's like, I need a break from this. And I stopped my client work and I thought, what do I want to do? Because the reason I was freelancing was to get away from having to be in front of my laptop the whole time, getting away from different emails from different clients and all these kind of things. And that's when I had a bit of a break. I went to Mongolia to my friend's wedding and did not check my laptop for a week. I didn't even bring my laptop. I think I did because, no, I did bring it. But I thought, this is now the time when I'm going to start the podcast. This is the time when I'm going to launch my course. This is the time where I'm going to pause client work and look at branding and all these kind of things. And I wouldn't say that it's been going uphill since. It's still a journey. I'm still figuring things out, like this podcast, like a newsletter. But it's definitely good that those things happen. But now I'm curious, you have all of these things that I'm kind of planning to do, or like at the beginning of. So like I mentioned, the podcast, newsletter, you have a YouTube, all these kind of things. What was it for you that made you think, oh, I don't just want to offer a certain freelance service. I'm going to create this whole brand. I'm going to create all these platforms. And also, how do you manage that? Because it is a lot of work. How do you do it?
Yeah. So I think one of the reasons why I wanted to start was, so this was back in 2015. So as I was freelancing, I was chatting to my wife, and I was listening to a lot of people back then, like Pat Flynn was a big influence, Smart Passive Income podcast, and he was like big on like sort of sharing your progress and like your journey and any advice as you go. And I was like, yeah, I like that sounds cool, like helping people, sharing my journey, and then seeing what comes after that. So I created a brand called studywebdevelopment.com, a website. It's a weird domain now because it's not really, in line, I would say 100% with my brand. But because web development helped me, I was like, okay, I think you should study it, and I'm going to share how you can make some income with that knowledge with freelancing, And that was awesome, like that was such a cool experience, getting emails from people saying like, like really hectic stuff, that they were really depressed and all of these things, and now they can provide for their family and enjoy certain freedoms and stuff. That is fulfilling. That is really, really nice. So I would say things like sort of compounded from there, because I've always been interested in business and all of these other things. And it's like, okay, how can I, but also in saying that, I don't want to be seen as like a course guru where I just make money selling courses, that should be very much a side income, and today it's a very small portion of my income. That led to other different things, like software, podcasts, YouTube, and different types of things. And how do I manage it? That's a good question. I enjoy the work that I do. Let me put it that way. I enjoy the work that I do. So I've got no problem working, 6 hours, 8 hours a day, if necessary, and sometimes like even this week has been a busy week because of the move and some other stuff that's happening. So now I'd work like 9 hours, like even now I look tired, I am tired, and how do I manage it? I think what has helped, okay, so it's the boundaries that I mentioned earlier. The other thing that has really helped change my perspective was I read about the case study from James Clear. So if you type in James Clear Ivy Lee method. James Clear Ivy Lee method. It's a fascinating case study on how a guy, productivity consultant, advised this big company on how to get more efficiency and get things done or whatever. And in short, it's about grouping your tasks every single day, focusing on the most important six. So you list 6 tasks for the day that you want to achieve. You start from the most important. Whatever you don't get done, you move over to the next day from importance or whatever. Such a simple and practical thing, but we so often tend to forget it. We look at our list, there's 20 things to do. What do I do? And you just get overwhelmed and you just don't start. So that's the thing. The other thing is, it's about knowing what to focus on, which is this. The other thing is how you focus on it. So when we work on important tasks, do we get distracted and look at YouTube videos? Do we look at our phone? Do we look at this and whatever? Because if you do, a task that should have taken half an hour now takes 1 hour because of the distractions, maybe even 2 because you just lose train of thought. So I think I also group it in the sense of, these are my 2 hours that I really need to focus in this day on these tasks. The other ones, I don't mind sort of a little bit of distractions and whatever. And then the other one, just wrapping up on that point, is knowing what tasks to outsource at a profit. It needs to make financial sense. I can't just spend stupid amounts on, things and where it doesn't make good ROI. Yes, I value my time, but I also I'm also running a business, not a non-profit, Yeah, I think a combination of those factors has helped, I would say.
I still struggle to find a system. I think I'm kind of there. There are days where it works well for me, but then there are days where I wake up in the morning and I see my massive to-do list. I'm calling it Kilimanjaro, and I don't know where to start. But then there are days where I know, like, for example, okay, I have 4 podcast recordings. I'm going to send the preparation emails. I'm going to set up the recording rooms, etc., etc. And I know what needs to be done because I have the deadline, which is not a made-up deadline that I gave myself. It's an actual deadline because the recording is going to happen. And those phases, I feel very productive. I can go like to-do list, item, tick, 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 tick. But on other days where it's so much more about the bigger picture, I struggle to figure out, okay, this would be useful for this.
Yeah.
So it is tricky, but it's very good guidance to what's the highest priority. But I also think because of that, often things that would potentially be beneficial, but they don't have that instant reward. Let's say, for example, launching a blog. If you write a blog article today, it's not going to change anything. But if you do it consistently over time, you wish you would have started way earlier, and it will eventually, hopefully, come to fruition. So I struggle also with prioritizing that, because some tasks that might seem not that important in the long run repetitively could have quite an impact. How do you deal with those kind of tasks, which I think it's called the Eisenhower matrix, where you prioritize tasks based on urgency, importancy, those that often get neglected but could in the long run lead to good impact? How do you deal with those tasks?
Yeah, that's actually such a good question, because you are planting a seed now in the hope to enjoy the shade and the fruit at a later stage. But it's like, you can't, because you need to harvest now, on your other work. So it's like, how do you find that balance between harvesting and planting more seeds? The answer for me, at least, is you have to, so it starts with discretion, right? You need to make a decision at some point with what you know right now. And I think that over time, you get some wisdom and experience, and then you hopefully learn from the decisions you've made last year, 2 years, 3 years ago, and then you realize like, this has a similar pattern. Let me do this rather, or let me choose this type of task. Let me allocate my time to this. And I think that over time, it gets better. Look, I mean, I think it's important to reflect, maybe once a month or once a year. So actually every year I'll go away, and just plan the year, reflect on the year and everything. And I think like, what could I have I done differently? How could I have done this differently and everything? And I think that is important, the reflection side, because the reality is we're living in the now. We need to make decisions now. It's only in hindsight can we reflect and look back on, that decision was okay, but I could have made a better decision. Or that was actually stupid. Why did I do that? I made a mistake there, and so on. And that's important, because we are not perfect beings, we won't make 100% good decisions. But if we don't reflect and we don't analyze, we don't see how we can improve, I think that's the problem. So I think I would say, like, give yourself some grace for making these decisions, because it's not going to be perfect. Accept that. Just try and make the best decision you can with what you know now. Do it. Reflect in 2 weeks or a month at the end of the month and see how you can improve, and just try and, make improvements from there.
Sounds like a good plan. What's your biggest challenge you're facing right now as a freelancer?
I think in a general business sense, I'm sort of at the tipping point of, like, do I spend more time on this project or this project, because as a freelancer side, if I talk about it from an agency perspective, I would say there's a lot that is working pretty well, now, from outsourcing, like web design stuff, development stuff, liaising with clients, they're paying on time. There's clients that are outsource complete work to, like to others, and I would spend 1 hour a month on them, and they would be paying good amounts. I think from a freelancing perspective, it's gotten quite much better over the years. It's more a thing of, like, the business side of things, because there's a lot of moving parts at the moment. I also try and think, how can I diversify a bit more risk, because I want the perspective of how can one grow a business without being, like, the face of the business as well, and also, as you felt with cold email and stuff, I was thinking to myself, like, a lot of the peers that I work with, and a lot of our peers, do, like, courses and all of these things, and it's good. I've got courses and stuff, but it's like, I don't want to keep hammering down on that to make that, like, the focus, So I want to try and think of, like, what can I do project-wise? Maybe it's software, or maybe it's different other things. Maybe it's e-commerce or something to branch out a bit more. So I think that's sort of my challenge at the moment, dealing with, how do I hire more people for these things, or do I spend more time on that? Do I plant the seed? Do I spend that time investment to plant the seed, or do I actually, focus on what's working? And I think that's sort of been a bit of a struggle. So I've been getting some advice from some friends and people who I consider very wise in this area, and then we'll see what lies ahead. But I would say that's my current struggle. And how about you?
On that note, you're actually kind of solving that struggle with your new SaaS project, so the Client Manager. So that's probably, I guess, where your struggle is. Do you want to invest more in that, or are you going to do client work, or like all these kind of different trees you're planting? Yeah. So can you tell the listeners a little bit more about that software?
Yeah. So Client Manager is, I talk about it, or I refer to it as the simple client onboarding and management tool. And right now it's focused on freelancers and agency owners, but there's actually quite a few people in the service-based industry, like accountants, lawyers, and all of that stuff, who are actually using it, which is quite cool to see. Yeah, it's been a journey. Wow. I've spent a lot of cash on it, and it is far from breaking even. So I'm in the red by quite a big amount, but I'm still keeping it going. I'm starting marketing properly next month, doing cold outreach. Can you believe it?
Oh, wow.
But I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I think it sort of competes with like a lot of the big brands, and I think our approach is on, like, the user friendliness, very clean interface and stuff. We don't have all the features that our competitors have now, but within the next few months we're going to have some awesome features. So yeah, at the moment there's quite a few developers, like a design guy. I'm handling support myself to get to know the user feedback and everything. And I'm really enjoying it. And there's also another SaaS in the pipeline that we're in development that we're going to launch in the next 2 months, I would say. So that's taking also a lot of time. I mean, I'm really enjoying the whole SaaS thing, even though it's not profitable yet. I think that we'll get there. And I actually even launched a podcast with my friend. His name's Simon Hoiberg. He's got a lot of big SaaSes. He does very well, like $1 million a year. And we've created like a podcast about growing a SaaS from like bootstrapping from like 0 to 1 million and everything like that. So that's also an interesting seed that we're planting. That is Client Manager in a nutshell.
Nice. Sounds super interesting. I'm also looking forward to how this seed is going to grow, because I've also played around with that software. And you asked me before about my struggles and my big challenges now. And for me, it's similar to what you said. Which plant do you water? And it's this thing that I feel very comfortable with freelancing, my UX services. I'm also very happy to mentor juniors, like the subcontractor. I would love to have more of these type of projects. I'm comfortable with that. But the podcast is a new baby. Also, selling courses is something I want to do. And I've launched one cohort successfully. And now I'm working on the other one. And it's, again, this time where you have to, when you're at the beginning, where you have to be more, how do you call it? Where you have to do this kind of cold outreach. And I'm in a very different stage with my UX services compared to the podcast and that. And in a way, it's nice because you're a beginner again. And I like this feeling because I know how amazing the freelance journey was for me. And I hope that similar things will happen with the podcast, with the courses. But at the same time, it's this uncertainty, it's this fear. But it's also what makes it interesting. But yeah, so my challenge is also how much energy am I going to invest into each of those? Is it going to take too much out of my UX stuff, which runs quite nicely now, and I don't really want to park this fully. So that's kind of my challenge, but it's a journey.
The podcast, I would really recommend that you try and do at least weekly for you. Just speaking to you now, you're definitely very good at asking questions, very good listener and everything.
Thank you.
And no doubt it's good and helpful for your audience. So I would recommend at least doing a weekly one. Keep doing it. I think what can be time consuming is obviously researching each guest. Maybe over time you might decide like, hey, I'm just going to wing it or something to save time and see if it affects, the quality of it. But I think you would be pretty good at it. So
thank you.
Yeah, it's something to consider because I've got a friend who's got a podcast and it's pretty big, but he's only got like 10 episodes and he takes so long to research a guest that he actually records a podcast and then or season, and then he stops for a few months and then another season, and he puts a lot of pressure on himself to really ask these good questions. And no doubt the quality is amazing, but he's juggling so many other things that he's spending too much time on watering the seed. So I think a balance is important. So let's see what happens. But I think if I was you, looking outside in, I'm quite optimistic for the seed that you're planting.
Oh, thank you. Well, this is season 2. Season 1 was I recorded, I edited, and then I tackled the next guest. Whereas now I'm trying to bulk batch. So I have 4 or 5 recordings this week. I had 4 or 5 last week. And then next week I'm going to sit down and edit all of them, write all the notes, find out the titles, which I find is the hardest part for the podcast. So yeah, I'm kind of evaluating the progress. But yeah, so thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. I really, really enjoyed this. I learned a lot and it was so interesting to hear more about your journey. There are questions that I ask all of my guests. And one of them is, would you ever go back to a permanent job?
So first of all, thank you for the privilege of coming on. It was really nice chatting with you for this long and getting to know a bit more about you as well.
Thank you.
Stuff that I didn't know. Would I ever go back? And it's very easy for me to say never. I think I am unemployable. However, if I had to, I would not enjoy it. Put it this way, you can be sure of one thing. I'm going to do everything in my power to not make it that I go back to a full-time job. So I think that'll be my answer. I would not like to, and I'm trying everything to avoid it. But business is not easy, business is not easy. I'll leave it at that. I do not want to see myself as an employee, put it that way.
Okay. And if you could go back in time to maybe the person where you were freelancing, it wasn't making enough money, you were incredibly frustrated, you spent all your time working, you couldn't even come home and chat to your wife because you were busy working. If you think of the person, the situation, the frustrations you've had back then, what would you today tell your past self?
Buy as much Bitcoin as possible. Yeah, that's really a good question. I think it would be like simple advice, just push through. It will be worth it in the end, even though you can't see over the horizon. The view is much better than what you would expect it to be.
Nice. This is nice. And if you think of your future self, let's say 5 years from now, your kid would probably go to school or prepare for going to school. Imagine where your business would be, where client manager might be, or the person that you're going to be. So you said you changed a lot since you started freelancing. So imagine who you will be in 5 years. What do you think will your future self tell you today?
Wow. Yeah. That's a good question. Yeah, it's actually an interesting thing thinking about the future. So my wife and I, we often talk about it, and I think what has helped us, because we've experienced like a lot of passings in our family and everything, the past few years, and It's been a big wake up to realize no, it's okay. It's been a big wake up to realize we're planning for the future, and we should plan for the future. I think it's good, to have some ambition and goals and all of these types of things. But I think we so often tend to forget the present, so we don't live intentionally. We sort of live in our mind about, man, it will be so nice if we had this, or if we were there, and if we were experiencing this and whatever, that we actually forget to enjoy the present. So our perspective has very much been let's enjoy, tomorrow's not promised to us. Let's just really be grateful for this day and try and, really make it meaningful. But in saying that, it's important to have those long-term goals and everything. So I think if I was looking back, and if I was my future self is telling myself now some advice. Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think it'll be make sure your priorities are aligned. Money comes and goes. Live each day as if it's your last. The business, the family, everything else will work itself out if you focus on your core foundational things in your life, and be intentional about today. Try and make the most of the talents, the resources, the skills that you have, and the fruits will come.
Nice. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I really, really enjoyed this. If any of the listeners want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Elisabeth. I've got a personal website. It's my name, Kyle Prinsloo, Kyle Prinsloo. So you can just Google that, and all of the stuff, I would say most of the stuff that I'm working on is on the website and linked there. So once again, I really, really appreciate it, and we'll be in touch after this, and definitely you must come on my podcast probably next month or the month after, so we'll be in touch as well.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thanks, Elisabeth. Really appreciate it.
I really enjoyed talking with Kyle, and I hope you enjoyed listening. I'm adding all the links to the description of this podcast, including the link to sign up to the Freelance Fam community. I'm part of the community myself, and I have to say it's very active. If you liked this episode, please leave a review and hit the follow button. This helps the Freelance Blueprint get suggested to more freelancers like you. And feel free to share this episode with anyone you think can benefit from listening. That's all from me, and I can't wait to have you join again next week.